Ever wish you had like a guidebook,
Yeah.
you know, for those like big life battles? And I don't mean like an actual fight, although that'd be kind of cool, but more like a guide to help you deal with all that inner stuff,
Yeah.
the doubts, the uncertainties, figuring out what you're supposed to do with your life, all of that.
Yeah, those internal struggles can be tough.
Totally. And that's what we're diving into today, the Bhagavad Gita. You can almost think of it like that, a guidebook.
It is. And what's fascinating is it's not some serene message whispered in a cave somewhere. This wisdom was literally delivered on a battlefield.
Okay, talk about a high-pressure situation.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? You're a warrior, you're about to face a battle that'll decide the fate of your entire kingdom, and, oh yeah, your own family's on the other side. That's intense.
Intense is an understatement.
And that's exactly where the Bhagavad Gita drops us right into the action. We meet Prince Arjuna, our hero, who's understandably freaking out. I mean, I'd be freaking out.
Right. I think we'd all be questioning a few life choices at that point, but this is where it gets really interesting. Arjuna's charioteer, Krishna, steps in to offer guidance and support. But here's the twist. Krishna is also a manifestation of God.
Whoa, okay, that changes things a bit.
It's such a clever narrative device, because it instantly makes this ancient text relatable. We've all felt that sense of being overwhelmed, of facing those crossroads in life where you don't know which way to turn. The Gita, even though it's ancient, speaks to that very human experience.
Totally. It's like stumbling upon a self-help book, but instead of like, those cheesy motivational quotes, you're getting this profound cosmic wisdom. And all this while arrows are flying and there's like a full-on war happening.
Exactly. And speaking of wisdom, one of the things that always blows me away about the Gita is how it doesn't present just one path to enlightenment. It outlines 3 distinct paths, recognizing that we're not all wired the same way.
Oh, tell me more about that. I like where this is going. 3 paths, huh?
Yeah, so there's the path of Jnana Yoga. This one's for the thinkers, the ones who are drawn to knowledge and contemplation. Imagine diving deep into the very nature of reality, meditating on the universe and your place in it.
Oh, I could see that appealing to a certain type of person for sure. The deep thinkers, the philosophers out there. So what about the other paths?
Right, so then you've got the doers. These are the folks who find fulfillment through action, through service. That's the path of karma yoga.
Okay, so less about just sitting and pondering the universe, more about actually getting your hands dirty.
Exactly. But it's not just about going through the motions. It's about infusing your actions with intention, with purpose. It's about offering those actions to something bigger than yourself.
I can dig it. So that's 2 paths. What's the third?
All right, so the third path is bhakti yoga, the path of devotion, of pure love for the divine. It's all about cultivating this really deep, personal connection with the divine, however you conceive of it. And what's interesting is that while the Gita acknowledges all 3 paths as valid, it actually emphasizes bhakti yoga as the most direct route in our current age.
Okay, so I'm already seeing how this ancient text connects to our modern world. It's like we're all about efficiency these days, right?
Yeah.
We want the most streamlined path, the most effective method for basically, well, everything, including, I guess, enlightenment. But here's where things get really wild. The Gita doesn't just stop at, here's how you reach enlightenment. It goes way deeper, challenging our very concept of ownership with this radical idea of non-attachment.
It's a real head-scratcher at first. The Gita basically states that everything belongs to Krishna, to God. Now, before you start picturing, some cosmic landlord demanding rent, think about what it means for you. Like, truly think about it. How much of our stress, our anxieties, those come from clinging to things. And I mean that in every sense: possessions, outcomes, even relationships.
It's so true. It's like we're always clutching on to things, holding on for dear life. But why?
It's almost like we're trying to, hold on to a handful of sand. The more we squeeze, the more slips through our fingers.
Ooh, that's a powerful image.
It is. And what the Gita's getting at is that real freedom, true peace of mind. It comes from letting go of that need to control everything.
I can see that, but it's a lot easier said than done, right?
Right.
Especially in our world today. It feels like we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us to get more, achieve more, buy more, hold on to it all tighter.
For sure. It's almost like going against the grain to say, hey, maybe just let go.
Right, totally.
But when you actually spend time with the Gita's teachings, you realize non-attachment isn't about becoming indifferent or just not caring about anything.
So it's more nuanced than that.
Way more nuanced. It's about shifting that focus. you know? Instead of being fixated on all the temporary stuff, possessions, outcomes, you start focusing on what's eternal, what's truly meaningful. It's about finding that deep down security and happiness in something beyond the roller coaster of life.
Okay, yeah, that's resonating. And you know what? This actually reminds me of that story, that metaphor in the Gita. Somewhere where Krishna talks about the two trees, right?
Oh, yeah, the Asvatha and the Ashwatha
Yeah.
tree.
Yes. Those are the ones. Okay, so for everyone listening, the Asvatha tree, it represents the material world. All the stuff we see, crave, chase after. The Gita describes it with roots growing upwards and branches spreading out everywhere. It's vast, tempting, but ultimately it's temporary.
And that's the key, right?
Yeah.
Temporary. Because then Krishna contrasts it with the Ashwatha tree.
Which is, wait, remind me.
It's described as this imperishable tree, its roots grounded in the divine.
Right. It's like one tree is all about fleeting pleasures and the other is about lasting fulfillment.
Exactly. The Gita is basically saying, look, you can chase after those shiny fruits on the Asvatha tree, but they'll always be temporary, subject to decay, to loss, just like everything in the material world.
And we've all experienced that kind of loss, right? The disappointment when something you thought would last forever
Doesn't. It's all part of life. But the Gita is offering an alternative. It's saying, hey, why not seek nourishment from the Ashwatha tree instead? That's where you'll find true fulfillment, true liberation from suffering.
Man, that makes me think about all the energy we expend on things that, at the end of the day, don't really matter.
It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like, what if we could just loosen our grip a little, you know? Just breathe and trust. Maybe then we'd actually find that peace the Gita keeps talking about.
I think there's something to that.
But you know what else strikes me about the Gita? And this is what I find so refreshing, is that it doesn't demand blind faith. It's not about just following a set of rules without understanding why.
It's true. In fact, it actually criticizes empty rituals when they're done without any real understanding or genuine devotion behind them.
Right. It's almost like the Gita is saying, hey, don't just go through the motions. Engage with this, question it even. Use your mind, question your beliefs, and seek out a real, genuine understanding.
It's all about self-reflection, about that critical thinking, and that's what makes it so different from texts that demand blind faith. The Gita, it wants you to think for yourself.
It's empowering, especially when you remember the setting of all this. I mean, we're talking about a battlefield, a place of intense action and serious consequences.
Definitely not the place for passive acceptance.
No kidding. And speaking of intense, did you know that the Gita actually hints at being millions of years old? Like, it straight up drops this number, 120 million years.
It's true. That suggestion of an incredibly ancient origin is right there in the text, and it's led to a lot of different interpretations.
Well, I bet 120 million years will do that.
Some scholars take it literally, pointing to this incredibly vast and ancient history, but others see it more metaphorically. They argue it highlights the timeless nature of the Gita's wisdom.
Okay, so whether you take it literally or metaphorically, I think we can all agree, the fact that it still resonates with people today, thousands of years after it was first shared, that says something. It's like it speaks to something essential about being human, don't you think?
Absolutely. It suggests those struggles we face today, the inner conflicts, searching for meaning, that longing for peace. Those aren't new. We might have fancier gadgets now, but the core stuff, it's the same.
We're all part of this long, continuous human story. And the Gita, in its own way, is offering guidance for navigating that.
I love that. A continuous human story. It's a beautiful way to look at it.
And speaking of looking, there's that part where the Gita talks about demonic traits. And at first, that sounds kind of intense, demonic traits. But then you actually read what it describes. Excessive pride, greed, total disregard for others. And it's like, wait a minute. This sounds eerily familiar. It's like a laundry list of the stuff causing so much suffering in the world.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
Thousands of years ago, they were already identifying these toxic patterns of behavior.
So it's not about, pointing fingers and saying, you're demonic. It's more about recognizing those tendencies within ourselves. That's where the real work is, right?
It's like holding up a mirror and taking an honest look at what we see. The Gita is not just describing some abstract concept of evil. It's pointing to tendencies we all have within us, those patterns of behavior that lead to so much conflict and suffering.
It's like we've been handed this ancient mirror, right? And we've been looking into it, reflecting on all this wisdom from the Gita, from the battlefield setting, to those paths of enlightenment, the challenge of non-attachment, and then facing those demonic tendencies within. It's a lot.
It is a lot to take in, but even with all its depth, all the heavy stuff we've unpacked, the Gita doesn't leave you feeling, hopeless or overwhelmed. If anything, I always feel strangely hopeful after reading it.
Oh, totally. It's empowering.
It reminds us we actually have a say in this. We have the power to choose our path, to act in ways that align with our values.
Yes. And it's not about being perfect. Like the Gita is not saying you have to turn into some detached monk living in a cave somewhere.
Mhm.
It's about recognizing those less than ideal parts of ourselves, those demonic patterns that we all fall into sometimes.
Mm.
And then it's about making different choices,
Mhm.
choosing to be and do better.
Exactly. And that's where real inner transformation happens. And the amazing thing is, the Gita says this journey toward liberation, it's not something that happens after you die or once you somehow reach some perfect state. It can happen right now in the middle of everything.
Wait, seriously? That's kind of mind-blowing.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting. There's this metaphor in the Gita, this image of the city of nine gates.
The city of nine gates. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more.
So this city, it represents the human body. And those nine gates, those are our senses: sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing, and then our faculties of speech, excretion and procreation.
Ah, I see. Okay, it's all clicking now. It's like, no wonder it's so hard to find that inner stillness when we're constantly bombarded by information and sensations. Those nine gates are working overtime.
Exactly. But here's the amazing thing, and this is where the hope comes in. The Gita says you can experience true liberation, true inner peace, even while you're still living in that city of nine gates. It's not about denying those experiences or trying to, escape from the world.
So what? We just, make peace with the chaos.
In a way, yes. It's about rising above it all, not letting your senses, your ego call all the shots. It's about finding freedom within.
That's such a powerful idea. It's like liberation isn't some far-off destination you have to struggle to reach. It's accessible right here, right now, in the messiness of life.
It's about changing your perspective, really, shifting your focus to what truly matters.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? As modern people living our modern lives, how do we navigate this whole city of nine gates thing? How do we create that inner sanctuary amidst all the noise?
That's the question, isn't it? And I think that's part of what makes the Gita so brilliant. It doesn't try to give you a step-by-step guide or a one-size-fits-all answer. It invites you to explore, to try things out, to find your own unique path to that inner freedom.
It's like that saying, right? I can give you the map, but you have to walk the path yourself.
Exactly. And if our deep dive into the Gita today has sparked even a little bit of curiosity for you, I highly recommend checking out the text for yourself.
Yes, it's such a trip. Don't let the whole ancient text thing scare you off. You might be really surprised by how relevant it feels, how insightful it is, and honestly how inspiring. It's not just for spiritual seekers. The Gita is really a guide to navigating what it means to be human, period.
It's about facing those universal challenges, those internal battles we all experience, and finding a way to not just survive, but to thrive.
Exactly. And on that note, a huge thank you to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the Bhagavad Gita. We hope you found it insightful. Until next time.